So I'm going to click, start the thing. All right, so GitHub. To get started with GitHub, you're going to need to make an account. If you have not already, you're going to go to github.com. It'll have just on the front page a way for you guys to make an account. And you want to sign up with your personal email or a personal email. You just don't want to use your school email, because you use your school email for school projects. The university will get very angry with you if you use the school email for doing the games that we're about to do. All right.
Okay.
Okay, that's volume control now. There we go. All right, so what is a repository? So the repository is the repo for your project. It is basically a collection of all the files that you have uploaded to GitHub. And whenever you're sharing the project, you're sharing the repo, you will be able to clone it and have different versions of it and merge different versions together and branch off. And that's sort of the magic of GitHub, is you can work together and have multiple versions. To make a repo, you can either open a local one on your machine and push it, or you can clone a remote repo onto your machine from the internet. To clone a repo, because making one on your machine, you'll usually do that through whatever GitHub software you use. There's GitHub Desktop, GitHub GitKraken. We'll get into that a little bit later. And you can also make remote repos on the GitHub website. Anyways, but what you're mainly going to be doing is cloning repos. And to do that, you're going to use this green code button right over here. When you drop that down, you'll have a little link, an HTML link. You'll copy that, and you'll use the git clone command in whatever application you're using, whether that's Git Bash, GitKraken, GitHub Desktop. And then that will create a copy or a clone of the GitHub project on your local machine. So you'll have a local copy of the project. Now, what you're going to be mainly doing with GitHub is you're going to be making changes on your local project and then sending those changes to the remote project. And that's where you're going to get into miss this thing. So the main actions of Git with doing all of this are pulling and pushing. So pulling is how you retrieve files from the remote repository. You use the pull command, and you pull them from the remote repository into your local repository. To push files or to send files, use the push command. And that will send your local files to the remote repo. Pushing has a multi-stage process. So what you're going to be doing is you're first going to stage your files. So you're going to pick the files that you want to send. That's staging. Then you're going to commit those staged files. It's going to lock them in, and you're going to lock those in with a message detailing what changes that you've made. And then finally, you're going to push them and do the final commit. All right, some other things to remember when you're pushing and pulling is to make sure that you're pushing and pulling from the correct branch. So whenever you're messing with GitHub, you're going to be dealing with a lot of different branches. Say someone wants to make a change, they're going to basically make a new branch to do that change so they don't hurt the main project. And then they're going to make their changes, and then they're going to push those changes and then merge back into things. So you don't want to be pushing to the main project when you're trying to work on the development side of the project. And then you want to also remember to always pull before you push, because you don't want to push any changes before you pull the most up-to-date version. If someone else has made changes and you want to work on those changes, if you push your changes before that, what's going to happen is a merge conflict, and we will get into how bad that is later. All right, so talking about branches, here is a GitKraken, which is one of our things that we use. Helps visualize branches. So you can see here there's the main branch, the dev branch here, and you'll see that there's people coming up with different ideas. Jack UI, he's working on the UI here. So he branches off, he updates the UI, and then he merges the branch right back into the development branch. So the main master branch is this green branch you see right here. That's the working version of your project. So you want that to be solid, have as few bugs as possible. You want it to be like the cleanest working, most up-to-date thing you have. And then when you also want to have a development branch, which is where you're making changes. So you're going to be making new branches off of your development branch, adding changes, merging those back into the development branch. And eventually, when you have enough changes on there, you want to merge parts of the development branch into the main branch to fully update your main branch. All right, so to make a new branch, you're going to be on the current branch. So say we're on the dev branch here. You can see that we've selected dev here, that we're on our local dev branch. And then we're going to create a new branch there, which you can do that. There's usually different ways to do it depending on where you are. But you just use the whatever branch command you want to use. Use the branch command, create a new branch. And that will create a new branch on your local machine. if you're doing it locally. If you're doing it on the line, you'll create a branch on the remote machine. Depending on where you create your branch, you have to either push or pull. So if I create a branch on the remote machine, or the remote repo, I need to pull that branch onto my local machine to be able to make changes. If I make a branch on my local repo, I need to push that branch for it to show up for everybody else. All right. And then merging branches. So whenever you're done developing, I've gone over this, you want to merge it back into the main branch. And the changes from the merge, from the new branch that you've made here, so this updated UI, all those changes will now be merged into the development branch. So all those changes will now show up in the development branch when anyone pulls next time. All right, merge conflicts. Will.
So merge conflicts are really tricky. I don't know how many of you have run into one before. They're really scary. At least they can be, but they don't really have to be. To sort of get a good idea of what's happening, I'll go through a hypothetical example, and then I'll try and go and show you a practical one as well. So here's a hypothetical example. So picture Grace and Joey, right? They're working in separate branches that they've both made off of develop. And Grace finishes her feature first, merges her changes into the develop branch. So the develop branch is now updated. But Joey is still working on his changes based on the old version of what was in the develop branch. So now we've hit the conflict when Joey wants to go merge his changes back into develop, because essentially Git is having to say, well, whose changes are right, so to say, right? If they've both edited the same script and the same lines, who's right? It doesn't know. And so you have to go in and say what you actually want to be in your repository, Joey or Grace's changes. So
translating it to R now.
Last thing, two things to go over. One, I forgot to put this in, but there's nothing to consider when you're pushing and pulling from remote files is to have a gitignore. So what that's going to do is it is a file telling Git what files to ignore when pushing and pulling, because there's certain stuff that you don't need on your remote repo. Because say when I have a Unity project, when I'm pushing and pulling stuff, there's stuff that everyone's Unity project's going to have that I don't need other people to pull. Because if they pull it in, you're going to pull in copies of that stuff, and that's going to break the project. So you need to ignore that whenever you're pushing and pulling. All right, so those, you can usually find templates for those online, so just look up like a Unity gitignore. I'm pretty sure GitHub has a template on there on their own official website. Not too hard to set up. If you need any help with this, ask the officers questions. We have experience with that sort of stuff. And then the last thing is GitHub Applications. So whenever you're using GitHub on your machine, you're going to want to use different applications. These are the three that we know the best. They are GitKraken, which is the one we use primarily here. It's a fully UI. It has this beautiful branching thing, visualizer to help you see how the branches are moving around and merging back into each other. It's very easy to understand, and we'd highly recommend it. There's GitHub Desktop, which is sort of like the web interface that you're used to online, but on the desktop. And you can see an example of that right over here. You have the same sort of green and red text editor style editing for resolving merge conflicts. And then what a lot of you people will be using in it's like CSC 116 if you guys are in that, or early stuff is Git Bash, where you'll kind of have like this whole console thing. And the pros of that is that you get more direct access to commands, so you can do stuff a lot more down at lower levels. And then it also makes you feel like a hacker man. It's cool. Yeah, and that's it. And there's the next workshop that's going on in the other room. So thank you.